Seems like every US service gun ends up being built by other folks, and the M9 is now on offer from a lot of other folks. The Girsan MC9 Regard X is a Turkish version of the Italian Stallion. So how does it stack up next to the Beretta M9A4? So I took my Beretta M9A4 and compared it to the Regard X, but first I had to remove the optic from my Beretta because the Regard does not have an optics mounting solution. And first, I'll get it right out of the way for those of you who are probably giggling. Yes, it is called the Regard, and those of you who speak fluent internet probably find that funny. Second, and I need to kind of talk about this, if you were to go out for one of these, the cost would set you back about 10 bills plus or minus, whereas the asking price on one of these is about 5, but you can find it on the street for less than that, closer to 4. So this one basically is nearly 3x what this one is, at least 2.5x. Cost is usually a terrible thing to make a decision based around for an expensive piece of equipment like a firearm, but it is a factor that many people have to consider when they're looking at something. Now, doing research, because we don't modify guns for reviews, right, YouTube, right? In doing research, the Beretta small parts should take minor fitting to be able to work inside the Regard X. I found accounts of people talking about getting the Langdon tactical trigger jobs to work in these guns, but they had to file on some pieces. And probably what matters the most is that it fits in Beretta M9A4 holsters. And a couple of tops of the waist features on the gun before we get out there. The frame is like a traditional 92 frame as far as the hump on the back strap is concerned, but the front strap is modified with finger grooves. Yes, finger grooves out of an aluminum frame. Actually works kind of nicely. The sights are dovetailed into the top of the slide, so you can use your favorite aftermarket sights. The safety decocker is set up like a traditional 92, so there it's in safe, there it's in fire, and you know, the slide ride safety controls are kind of goofy. Even Beretta's starting to get away from those. The aesthetic is pretty clean. It's got a tungsten coated frame with a tungsten coated barrel that is also spiral fluted, so it has a very high-end sort of look. It's got some, I guess these are, I don't know if these are plastic or maybe, I don't think they're G10, but it's got some pretty bitey little grips there, but they're not quite as bitey as the M9A4. The single biggest difference is the M9A4, and the M9A3 really is where it started. The M9A3 started as kind of an example of how good a Beretta 92 could be. They improved the trigger significantly and improved it again for the M9A4 straight from the factory, and this launched around the same time as the 92X version of these guns launched, and the triggers from the box are not a far cry from what the Langdon tactical triggers are. So the double action on this one is about 8, and the single action is just under 5, which is a really good duty weight for, you know, a trigger. 8-pound double action is very manageable, but the reset is kind of what matters there. So there's the reset on the Beretta, and here's the trigger pull. The trigger pull weight on the Regard is about 11 in double action, just over, and the single action with the reset, here it is, it's about twice as long, and the reset is about 5.5. Not the reset, the trigger break in single action is 5.5. The Regard is so similar to the Beretta that it actually comes with 2 Mechgar M9 magazines with 18 rounds of pop. That's a very welcome magazine. In my opinion, that is the best 92 magazine. I've got a bunch of them from when I used to compete with Berettas back in the day. So jumping in and seeing how it shoots, since the trigger is probably the single biggest difference between the two guns, I squared up and I decided 10 shots at 25 yards, double action.
So the double action didn't go well for either gun. The Regard, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Really explored the space on the target. But wait, there's more. The M9A4 didn't do a whole lot better. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Again, just I wanted to use the whole target. I paid for the whole target. I'm going to use the whole target. Also, I'm not good at iron sights, and the double action is long. Yeah.
And I can safely say in that comparison, the bad guys won. Nobody did well in that one. Both guns, I did absolutely terribly with it, which is surprising as I'm usually not that bad with double action, but 20 attempts, that was garbage. So let's take a look at single action then.
All right, Mr. Regard X, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's capable of grouping well, kind of, And I think where the shots are opening up is based on the sights that come on the gun are not as crisp and precisely machined as the Beretta sights. Because if you look at this, I've got Mr. Beretta here at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And the lowest scoring shots are 2 8s. No X's, but lots touching the 10 circle. No X's, but plenty touching kind of the 10 circle. With irons, that's not bad. The Beretta irons are significantly better machined than the Girsan sights. They're also night sights for whatever that's worth. I don't like night sights, but you might. But this right here is what gives me hope that the Regard is going to be able to put out similar numbers to the Beretta when you do things like get good sights.
And in single action slow fire, the trigger reset is not a factor. If I was shooting at speed, this gun would be prized because it'd be less likely to short stroke the trigger. And I know that because just shooting around with the pistol, there were times when I would try to aggressively engage a target and I would short stroke the pistol because the trigger reset in single action is a little bit long. But the good news is that the accuracy is actually pretty good. Shooting the gun in rapid fire, they're basically the same. I don't know if the spring rate for the recoil spring is the same on the Regard, but I mean, it very much felt the same, and looking at the slow motion video, it looks the same too.
I like the finger grooves on the Girsan, which is like heresy because in YouTube lore, we're not allowed to say we like finger grooves because that's like, then you can't criticize Glocks. But I like the finger grooves despite the fact that the grip panels are not what I would want. And I did feel like I had a good lock on the gun from my right hand, but my support hand just definitely moved free on the grip panel. So aftermarket grips would definitely be something I would want to entertain for something like this to elevate it to the status of the M9A4.
So at the end of the video, I kind of give you my thoughts on how the guns actually stack up. And this is the point where you're like, the cheap one's just as good as the expensive one. No, the one that is nearly 3X is actually a much nicer shooter. It's got better iron sights, it's got a better trigger, it comes with more magazines, it's got an optic cut, it just does a lot more. And here comes the but the Regard X actually is a very accurate pistol, and I think if you wanted to spend the time to kind of elevate it to the same status as the M9A4, you could probably do it through a trigger job, new grips, and some new sights, and play with the spring weights, get them where you want them. So if you're kind of a project build kind of guy, I think it probably does make sense to kind of work on as a platform to build from. Now the price point that these are going for is about $4 and the closest Beretta, the cheapest of the 92 range, sells for closer to $6. So you're still underneath that if you were to step up into like a proper 92 FS, which this gun would be a pretty good analog for. And honestly, it would probably perform very similarly to what this is. So that's the Regard X. Thanks to EAA for sending the gun in so I could take a look at it. If you want to see a video about what, in my opinion, is the best Beretta 92, then you can check that out here.